You're about to hear a story filled with humanity, a journey that touches the heart of every listener. Every story on our channel carries a message of kindness, courage, and faith in what's good. If you feel that meaning too, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to our channel, because even a small action from you can bring a little bit of hope to someone out there who truly needs it. Thank you for being here. Now, let's begin the story. The sun rose gently over the small coastal town of Redstone, California, spilling a warm golden light over the narrow streets and the soft mist rolling in from the Pacific. At the corner of Elm and Harbor stood Redstone Grocer, a modest store with faded red paint, dusty windows, and a wooden sign that creaked when the wind shifted. It was not much, but to Lena Washington, it was a second home, a place where the rhythm of her days found quiet meaning. Lena had worked there for nearly 5 years, ever since the accident that had taken her husband's life at sea, an explosion aboard a naval supply vessel that left her a widow and her son, Tommy, without a father. She used to be a nurse at the county hospital, but the trauma had left her unable to stand for long hours. The wheelchair she now moved in had become both a burden and a symbol of survival. Every morning, before the first customers arrived, Lena unlocked the front door, adjusted her apron, and whispered a silent prayer, not for miracles, but for endurance. Redstone Grocer smelled of salt, oranges, and floor wax. There was always a low hum from the old refrigerator and a squeak from the wooden counter that Mrs. Carter, the owner, had promised to fix someday. But Lena didn't mind. She knew every shelf by heart, the dusty cereal boxes, the rows of canned soup, the glass jars of penny candy that children pressed their noses against on summer afternoons. Tommy would come by after school, dropping his backpack with a thud and heading straight for the little corner table where he did his homework while Lena worked the register. He was 10, quiet, thoughtful, with his father's gray-blue eyes and the same stubborn kindness that refused to dim. Mrs. Carter was kind but stern, a woman in her 60s who ran the store with a mix of discipline and affection. When she announced she'd be leaving town for 2 weeks to visit her daughter in Seattle, Lena felt a flicker of pride and fear. "You'll do fine," Mrs. Carter said, handing over the keys. "You always do." It was the first time Lena had ever been in charge, and the responsibility both thrilled and terrified her. That evening, after Tommy fell asleep, she sat by the window of their small apartment above the store, staring at the glow of the streetlight below. She thought about her husband, about the years when laughter filled their home, about how life had folded in on itself. Yet somehow, she was still here. The next few days passed peacefully. Lena managed the books, stocked shelves, and greeted customers by name. Some called her Miss Lena, others the heart of Redstone. But under the calm surface of the town, there was an unease she couldn't quite name. A few men had begun lingering near the back lot, rough-looking, with tattoos, and the kind of swagger that spelled trouble. Once she caught one of them staring through the store window, grinning when she met his eyes. She tried to ignore it, but a cold feeling lingered in her chest. Friday afternoon brought a soft drizzle and a lull in business. Lena sat behind the counter, sorting receipts while Tommy drew superheroes on a notepad. The bell above the door jingled, and 3 men walked in. Their boots thudded heavily against the floor, and the smell of alcohol followed them like a shadow. "Afternoon, ma'am," said the one in front, tall with a scar running down his cheek. "Heard the boss is gone. Guess that means you're the new sheriff here." His voice carried mockery, not charm. Lena tried to keep her tone even. "Can I help you find something?" "Yeah," he said, smirking. "Free beer." His friends laughed. Tommy froze in his chair, his pencil slipping from his hand. Lena's heart pounded. "This is a store, not a bar," she said quietly. "You'll have to pay like everyone else." The man leaned closer, his breath sour and hot. "You sure about that, sweetheart?" He reached for a bottle from the shelf, popped the cap, and took a swig. When Lena reached for the phone, he slapped it away. "Careful," he hissed. "Wouldn't want the place to burn down over a misunderstanding." For a moment, the store was silent except for the rain tapping against the window. Then Tommy stood up, trembling. "Leave my mom alone." The men laughed and walked out, but their eyes promised they'd return. As the bell jingled one last time, Lena's hands shook. She locked the door, held Tommy close, and whispered, "It's going to be okay." But deep inside, she knew something dark was coming, something that would test every ounce of courage she had left. The next day, the sky over Redstone turned a muted silver, and the air felt heavier, as if the town itself sensed what was coming. Lena arrived early at the store, her movements slower than usual, each sound in the aisles amplified. The flick of the light switch, the creak of the front door, the distant hum of the refrigerator. Tommy walked beside her, unusually quiet, eyes darting towards the street. "They won't come back, right, Mom?" he asked softly. She hesitated, forcing a smile. "They won't," she said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed the fear that had settled deep inside her chest. She told herself it was just a scare. People like that passed through all the time. But in her gut she knew Redstone wasn't that kind of town anymore. By noon, customers trickled in as if nothing had happened. Mrs. Fields came by for her daily milk. Old Mr. Jennings bought his newspaper and talked about the weather. Everyone smiled, but Lena noticed the glances. People had heard whispers. In small towns, rumors spread faster than the tide. She could feel it, sympathy mixed with curiosity, pity disguised as politeness. Every time the bell jingled, she flinched. Tommy tried to make her laugh, holding up a candy bar like a magic trick, but his smile never quite reached his eyes. The afternoon light shifted, turning golden and sharp as it filtered through the store windows. Lena was restocking the front shelf when a shadow passed across the door. Her stomach tightened. 3 silhouettes appeared against the glass. Broad shoulders, heavy boots. They came back. The bell chimed. "Well, look who's still open for business," said the scarred man with a sneer. His friends fanned out behind him, their eyes sweeping the shelves. "Didn't you get the message yesterday?" Lena's throat dried. "Please, just leave us alone." The man chuckled, walking closer. "We're just saying hello, sweetheart. Don't be rude." He grabbed a jar of candy, poured the sweets onto the floor, and crushed one beneath his boot. The sound cracked like a gunshot in the silence. Tommy stood frozen near the counter, fists clenched. "Stop it!" he shouted, his voice cracking. The man turned, his grin spreading wider. "This your boy? Brave little guy." He crouched down until his face was inches from Tommy's. Maybe he should learn some manners. Before Lena could move, he shoved a can off the shelf. It hit the ground and rolled under her wheelchair. Something inside her broke. "Get out," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Get out before I call the police." "Oh, we'll go," he said, stepping closer. "But you should know, this place won't be standing much longer." He flicked a match, watching it burn before blowing it out and tossing it on the floor. Then they laughed and left, their truck tires spitting gravel as they sped away. The moment they were gone, Lena's strength gave out. She grabbed the counter to steady herself, breathing hard. Tommy ran to her side, eyes wide with fear. "Mom, what do we do?" She looked around the mess. Broken glass, scattered candy, her hands shaking. "We clean up," she said softly, "and we keep going." But even as she spoke, she knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night, the rain returned, tapping against the windows like a warning. Lena sat in her apartment upstairs, staring at the flickering streetlight outside. Tommy was asleep, clutching the old stuffed dolphin his father had given him. She wheeled herself closer to the window, her reflection merging with the storm. A flash of headlights crossed the street, then lingered. Her pulse quickened. A dark truck idled across from the store, engine rumbling, lights dimmed. She couldn't see who was inside, but she knew. They were watching. Lena reached for the phone, then stopped. The police would file a report, tell her they'd keep an eye out. But in Redstone there weren't enough eyes to see everything. She needed help, someone who could make them stop. She thought of the stories her husband used to tell about the men he served with, the kind who didn't wait for permission to do what was right. Her gaze drifted toward the coastline, where beyond the dunes the Navy training range shimmered faintly under the rain. Somewhere out there, men like that still existed. Somewhere, someone strong enough to fight shadows with light. Downstairs a faint noise echoed, the soft scratch of paws on the porch. Lena froze, heart pounding, before realizing what it was. A German shepherd, soaked and panting, stood by the door, its intelligent eyes meeting hers through the glass. On its collar gleamed a small metal tag, Rex, U.S. Navy K-9, and behind it, stepping out of the rain with steady calm, was a man in a dark Navy uniform. Ethan Ward. The storm had found its answer. Rain hammered the streets of Redstone through the night, drumming against the metal roofs and whispering down the narrow alleys. Inside the darkened grocery store, Lena sat motionless by the window, her hands clasped tight on her lap, the reflection of headlights flickering in her eyes. Tommy slept fitfully on the couch, his small frame trembling every time thunder rolled across the bay. Then came the sound, slow, deliberate footsteps on wet pavement, followed by the faint click of claws. Lena's pulse quickened. She turned toward the door and froze. A silhouette stood there, broad-shouldered and still, rainwater glistening off his uniform. Beside him, a German shepherd waited, eyes fixed on her like sentinels of fate. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, calm, like an anchor in the storm. "Ma'am, my name's Ethan Ward. I'm with the Navy base outside town. Mind if I come in?" Lena hesitated, fear and relief colliding inside her. How did you—" "Your boy," he said softly, glancing toward Tommy. "He found me yesterday near the beach. Said you might need help." He lowered his voice, eyes scanning the dark street. "Mind if I keep watch a while?" She nodded. The dog, Rex, shook off Rain and settled near the door, ears twitching. Ethan stepped in, his boots leaving wet prints on the old wood. He moved with quiet precision, the kind that came from years of knowing danger by scent. The storm raged outside, but the stillness inside the store was heavier. Ethan stood by the window, every muscle alert. "They'll be back," he murmured. "Men like that don't take no for an answer." Lena swallowed hard. "I just want them to leave us alone." Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "They won't, not until someone shows them what no really means." There was no bravado in his tone, just fact. Rex lifted his head suddenly, ears perked. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Then came the sound of an engine, low, predatory. Headlights crawled up the street again, slowing near the store. Ethan moved fast. "Lights off," he whispered. Lena reached for the switch. Darkness fell. Outside, the truck idled, engine growling. Through the rain-smeared window, 3 shapes stepped out, flashlights slicing through the wet night. "Stay behind me," Ethan said, slipping a pistol from his belt, a standard-issue sidearm, holstered even off-duty. Rex stood at his side, growl deepening. The men reached the door. One banged hard, voice muffled by thunder. "Hey, sweetheart, we missed your smile." Another laughed. "Maybe we'll make this place ours tonight." The handle rattled. Ethan's eyes hardened. He whispered to Lena, "No matter what happens, don't open that door." Then he stepped forward, opening it himself. Rain and wind exploded inside. "You boys lost?" His voice was calm, firm. The men blinked, startled to see the Navy insignia on his sleeve. "Who the hell are you?" "The scarred leader snarled. "Just someone telling you this ends now." The man laughed, stepping closer. "You think that badge scares us?" Ethan didn't flinch. "No, but he might." He nodded toward Rex. In a blur, Rex lunged, knocking one of them to the ground, snarling, controlled but fierce. The other 2 rushed forward, one swinging a pipe. Ethan blocked it with his forearm, twisting the man's wrist until metal clattered on the floor. A sharp kick sent him sprawling. Rain mixed with sweat and blood on the concrete. The scarred man pulled a knife, his grin jagged. "Should have stayed out of it, soldier." Ethan moved in a flash. One step, one strike, disarming him, then pressing him against the wall. "You don't touch her. You don't touch that kid. Ever again." His voice was quiet but colder than steel. When the police sirens finally pierced the storm, the men were already on the ground, hands zip-tied, soaked, and defeated. Lena stared at Ethan, trembling. "You could have been killed." He gave a faint, tired smile. "Been closer before." Tommy ran to Rex, wrapping his arms around the dog's wet neck. Rex licked his cheek, tail wagging slightly. Mission complete. As dawn broke, the storm faded into a soft drizzle. Ethan stood outside, watching as the police cars disappeared into the gray. Lena rolled up beside him, her voice small but steady. "I don't know how to thank you." He looked at her, eyes reflecting the pale morning light. "Don't," he said. "Just don't let them silence you again." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. This time not from fear, but from something new. Hope. Behind them, the first sunlight touched the Redstone grocer sign, glimmering through the mist. Inside, Tommy fed Rex a biscuit, laughter finally breaking through the quiet. For the first time in weeks, the air in Redstone felt lighter, because someone had stood between fear and freedom, silent but unbreakable. The storm had passed, but Redstone still smelled of rain and burnt rubber. Puddles shimmered under the pale morning light as police tape flapped lazily in the breeze. Ethan Ward stood near the curb, his uniform damp, eyes fixed on the scorched patch of pavement where the thug's truck had spun out before crashing into a ditch. Rex sniffed along the curb, nose twitching, tracing invisible paths only he could sense. Lena and Tommy watched from the doorway of Redstone Grocer, the woman's hand resting protectively on her son's shoulder. "You should rest," she said softly. "You've done enough." Ethan shook his head. Not yet. His gaze moved from the burned truck to the horizon, where the fog from the ocean rolled inland like smoke from a fire that refused to die. The sheriff's car pulled up, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Sheriff Mills, a man whose age sat heavier in his eyes than in his body, stepped out, nodding at Ethan. "You handled yourself well last night," he said, "but you stirred up a hornet's nest." Ethan didn't flinch. "That nest was already there. I just kicked it open." Mills sighed, glancing around as if the air itself might be listening. "Those boys didn't act alone. They were hired muscle. Word is, Hayes Construction's been buying up property around town. Cheap. Anyone who doesn't sell suddenly finds themselves with problems." He met Ethan's eyes. "Victor Hayes is connected to people I can't touch without proof. Be careful." Later that day, Ethan sat at a table inside the dimly lit store, poring over a stack of old receipts and property letters Mrs. Carter had left behind. Rex lay by his feet, ears flicking every time a car passed outside. Tommy wandered closer, curious. "You think that Hayes guy sent those men?" Ethan looked up, his expression softened. "I don't think, kid. I know." He pointed to a document, a land offer with Hayes Construction's logo and a signature from a arm alone. "That's the same name as your friend with the scar." Tommy frowned. "The one who broke the candy jar?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, Ricky Wolf Malone, ex-security for Hayes, now a hired bully." That night, Ethan drove out to the industrial edge of town, where Hayes Construction had its offices, new glass panels rising out of mud and broken pavement. He parked the truck a few blocks away, rain starting again in fine mist. Rex hopped out, harness gleaming faintly under the streetlights. "Stay low," Ethan whispered. They moved silently, shadows slipping between stacks of lumber and idle machinery. The office windows glowed faintly from within. Through the blinds, Ethan saw Victor Hayes himself, a tall man in a tailored gray suit, laughing with two men over whiskey. His gestures were sharp, deliberate. the kind of confidence built on money and fear. On the table lay a folder stamped Redstone Redevelopment. Ethan lifted his camera, snapped a few photos through the rain-streaked glass. Then he froze. Hayes turned suddenly as if sensing eyes on him. He stepped closer to the window, eyes narrowing. For a split second their gazes met through the thin veil of rain and glass. Ethan's calm steel blue against Hayes's cold, calculating brown. The moment stretched, silent and electric. Then Hayes smiled, raising his glass in mock salute. "He knows," Ethan murmured. "Time to go." As they retreated, the sharp bark of Rex cut through the rain. Something moved behind them. A dark figure stepped out from the shadows, gun glinting under the light. "Should have stayed out of it, soldier," the man growled. Ethan ducked behind a metal beam as a shot rang out, sparks flying. "Rex, flank!" he ordered. The dog darted into the dark, silent as smoke. Another shot, then a thud. Silence. Ethan emerged, weapon raised, but Rex was already there, standing guard over the fallen man, snarling low. "Good boy," Ethan whispered, gripping his shoulder gently. By dawn, Ethan returned to the grocer with dirt on his boots and evidence in his hands. Photos, recordings, and a bloodied wallet bearing the Hayes construction insignia. Lena waited by the door, eyes wide. "Is it over?" she asked. He exhaled, shaking his head. "Not yet, but now we know who we're fighting." He handed her the file. "This isn't just about a store anymore. It's about the town." Outside, smoke from the construction yard rose into the morning air, curling like ghosts of what was to come. Ethan watched it drift toward the horizon, his jaw tightening. The battle was no longer just survival. It was justice. And for the first time, Redstone had someone willing to fight in the open. The town of Redstone woke under a bruised sky. Smoke from the construction yard still drifted above the rooftops, a ghostly reminder of what lay beneath the surface. Inside Redstone Grocer, Lena Washington sat at the counter, staring at the folder Ethan had brought the night before. Her hands trembled over the papers. Contracts, bribes, bank transfers, all pointing to one man, Victor Hayes. The name alone felt heavy, like a shadow pressing against her chest. She could hear Ethan's words echoing in her mind. "This isn't about a store anymore. It's about the town." Tommy sat quietly nearby, sketching something on a napkin. Rex in his K9 harness, standing tall. His small voice broke the silence. "Mom, are we safe now?" Lena hesitated. "We will be," she said softly, though she wasn't sure if it was hope or a promise. The doorbell jingled as Ethan stepped in, uniform crisp despite the sleepless night. He carried calm the way others carried weapons. "Sheriff's moving on the evidence," he said. "But Hayes has lawyers, and money buys time. We'll need your testimony, Lena." She looked at him, fear flickering behind her tired eyes. "If I speak, he'll come for me." Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "He already did. The question is, do you let him win?" The words hung between them like smoke. Lena glanced at Tommy, then back at Ethan. Something in her hardened, a quiet fire beneath the fear. "Then I'll testify." Ethan nodded once. "Good. I'll keep you safe. Both of you." Rex wagged his tail softly as if agreeing. By afternoon, the sky had turned orange with dust. A convoy of unmarked trucks moved through Redstone's outskirts, men inside whispering into radios. In his glass office, Victor Hayes watched from behind tinted windows, his reflection merging with the city's skyline. "She's talking," he said coldly. His assistant nodded nervously. "We'll handle it?" Hayes turned, eyes sharp as a blade. "Make sure she doesn't make it to court." That evening, Ethan and Lena waited in a safe house, a small cabin on the hill overlooking the bay. The sea wind carried the faint scent of rain and danger. Tommy played quietly with Rex, tossing a tennis ball that thudded softly against the floor. Ethan stood by the window, scanning the tree line. "You trust the sheriff?" Lena asked. "I trust what's in front of me," he replied. Then his radio crackled, a faint static followed by silence. He froze. They're cutting comms. He turned sharply. Downstairs. Now. The lights flickered out. Headlights flared outside. 2 black SUVs, engines growling like predators. Ethan motioned Lena and Tommy behind the kitchen counter. Stay down. Don't move. Rex bristled, low growl rumbling deep in his chest. Shadows moved beyond the windows. 3 men, then 4, weapons glinting. Ethan crouched near the door, pistol drawn. Rex, he whispered. Guard! The first window shattered. Gunfire ripped through the cabin. Glass exploded across the floor. Rex lunged toward the back, forcing 2 intruders to retreat with savage precision. Ethan moved like lightning, controlled bursts, each shot deliberate. 1 man fell, another fled toward the tree line. The smell of gunpowder and rain filled the air. Lena shielded Tommy, whispering prayers between sobs. When the noise faded, silence felt heavier than the gunfire itself. Ethan exhaled, sweat mixing with blood on his sleeve. You okay? He asked. Lena nodded shakily. Yes. Thanks to you. He checked Rex, small cut above his ear, nothing serious. Good boy, Ethan murmured, stroking his neck. Sirens wailed in the distance, Sheriff Mills's team finally closing in. Hours later, Lena sat in a hospital room, bandaged but alive. Ethan stood by the door, speaking quietly with the sheriff. We got one of them alive, Mills said. He talked. Hayes ordered the hit. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then it's over, Mills nodded. Almost. We still need her testimony to lock it. When they were alone, Lena looked at Ethan. I never thought courage would feel this heavy. Ethan smiled faintly. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing it anyway. Tommy ran up and hugged his mother, his voice muffled against her shoulder. You were brave, Mom. Lena's eyes glistened. No, honey. We were brave. As dawn painted the horizon pink, Lena wheeled herself to the window. Outside, Rex sat faithfully beside Ethan, both facing the rising sun. She whispered quietly to herself, no more running. The light caught on the edge of her hospital bracelet, turning it gold. Somewhere in that fragile glow, fear gave way to something stronger. Resolve. And on the street below, Ethan Ward looked up once, meeting her eyes. No words, just a nod, the kind only soldiers and survivors understand. Redstone was waking, and for the first time it was ready to fight back. The courthouse in Redwood County stood tall and austere against the gray sky, its marble steps gleaming from the morning rain. Reporters clustered outside like vultures, cameras flashing as black sedans pulled to the curb. Inside, tension hung thicker than the air itself. Lena Washington sat in her wheelchair at the edge of the courtroom aisle, hands clasped together, trying to steady her breathing. She had faced bullets, threats, and sleepless nights, but the quiet of a courtroom, the sterile order of justice, terrified her most. Ethan Ward sat 2 rows behind, uniform pressed, eyes sharp and steady. Rex waited outside, trained and patient, as if he too understood the gravity of the day. At the front table, Victor Hayes leaned back in his chair, a tailored navy suit wrapping his frame like armor. His expression was calm, too calm, as if this were just another business meeting. Beside him, his lawyer, sleek and venomous, whispered strategies like poison into his ear. When Hayes's eyes drifted to Lena, he smiled faintly, the same smile she'd seen through the rain-soaked glass weeks before. The memory made her pulse race. Ethan noticed and leaned forward slightly, a silent promise in his gaze. You're not alone. The judge entered. The room rose. Proceedings began. The prosecution laid out their case. Photographs, bank statements, testimonies from the captured thugs, all threads leading back to Hayes' construction. Yet each time, Hayes' attorney slithered through the facts, twisting words, suggesting coincidence, painting Lena as an unstable witness, traumatized by grief. When her name was called, Lena hesitated for a fraction of a second, then wheeled herself forward. The sound of her wheels against the marble floor, was the loudest thing in the room. The oath felt heavy on her tongue. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" "I do." Her voice trembled at first, but when she began, it grew steady. She told them about the night the men came, about the threats, the fire, the rain, about Ethan and Rex, the rescue, the evidence. Each word was a piece of her pain, laid bare under the sterile light. The defense tried to tear her apart, questioning her memory, her motives. "You expect us to believe a wheelchair-bound woman saw all this through a storm?" The lawyer sneered. Lena paused. The courtroom fell silent. "You don't need legs to see the truth," she said quietly. The words struck like a hammer. Even the judge looked up. Ethan's chest tightened with pride. For a moment, the steel-blue calm in his eyes softened. The defense lawyer regrouped, pressing harder. "Isn't it true you were emotional, frightened, perhaps even delusional?" Lena's gaze lifted, unwavering. "Yes," she said. "I was scared. I still am. But fear doesn't make you blind. It makes you fight harder to see." The jury watched her, not as a victim now, but as a woman reclaiming her power. When Ethan was called to the stand, the tone shifted. The defense tried to discredit him too, painting him as a vigilante, a soldier who acted outside the law. Ethan's voice remained calm, deliberate. "I didn't come to fight a war," he said. "I came to stop one." The lawyer smirked. "And you expect us to believe you just happened to be there?" Ethan met his gaze. "No, I was there because no one else would be." Then came the recording, the one Ethan had captured through the rain, Hayes bragging about cleaning out Redstone. The room rippled with murmurs. Hayes's composure cracked for the first time. His lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. "Play it again," she ordered. The sound filled the courtroom. "Make sure she doesn't make it to court." Silence followed, heavy, final. Hayes's jaw clenched. The mask shattered. The jury exchanged glances, the verdict already written on their faces. The trial stretched another day, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, Hayes didn't look at Lena. He looked at Ethan, eyes cold, with a promise of vengeance that would never come to pass. Outside, the sun broke through for the first time in weeks. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Lena wheeled out beside Ethan, Tommy running ahead with Rex bounding after him. The boys' laughter echoed off the courthouse steps. "We did it!" he cried. Lena smiled through tears. "No, sweetheart, we all did." Ethan looked toward the horizon, the ocean glinting beyond the hills. "Redstone's yours again," he said. "You gave it back its voice." She turned to him, her expression soft. "And you gave it its strength." Rex barked once, tail wagging as if to seal the moment. The wind carried the sound of seagulls and the smell of salt and rain. Not the scent of fear anymore, but renewal. For the first time, Redstone felt alive. And for the first time, silence didn't mean weakness. It meant peace. The morning air carried the scent of salt and coffee as sunlight poured over Redstone for the first time in what felt like forever. The storm had passed, the courthouse crowds had vanished, and life was beginning again in small, quiet ways. On Elm Street, the faded red sign of Redstone Grocer had been freshly painted. The letters gleamed softly under the rising sun. Tommy's Corner. Below it, a small plaque read, "For those who stood when silence was easier." Inside, Lena Washington arranged a new display of oranges and bread, the smell of flour and fresh paint mixing in the air. She wore a light blue dress, hair pulled back neatly, her movements steady and calm. The wheelchair was still there, but it no longer defined her. It moved with her rhythm, not against it. Tommy darted between the aisles, chasing Rex, whose nails clicked against the wooden floor as he trotted happily. The dog stopped occasionally to glance at the window, ever the sentinel, though now his eyes were softer, untroubled. "Careful with that basket," Lena called, smiling. Tommy grinned. "Yes, ma'am." His voice echoed through the store, the sound of normal life finally returning. A faint bell rang as the door opened. Ethan Ward stood there, sunlight catching on the brim of his navy cap. He looked different, the same uniform but a different weight behind his eyes. Calm, lighter somehow. "Place looks good," he said, stepping inside. Lena smiled, the kind that came from gratitude rather than habit. "It's not much, but it's ours again." He nodded, glancing around. "Smells like peace." Tommy ran up, clutching Rex's leash. "Ethan, look what Mom did!" He pointed to a small photo framed near the register, a candid shot taken the morning after the trial. Ethan and Rex standing outside the courthouse, rainlight on their shoulders. Beneath it, handwritten in Tommy's messy scrawl, "Our heroes." Ethan chuckled softly. "You're gonna make me blush, kid." Tommy laughed. "You can't! You're a soldier!" Rex barked once, tail wagging, as if seconding the joke. Lena poured 2 cups of coffee, sliding one toward Ethan. "You heading out?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Base recalled me this morning. They're redeploying our unit, humanitarian ops overseas." A flicker of sadness crossed her eyes, quickly hidden behind composure. "So this is goodbye?" "For now," he said. "Redstone doesn't need soldiers anymore. It has its own guardians." His gaze moved to her and Tommy. "You built something stronger than walls here. You built faith." They stood in silence for a moment, the kind that needed no words. Outside, the sea wind brushed through the open door, fluttering the edges of the curtains. Ethan set his cap back on, straightened it, then knelt beside Rex. "You did good, buddy. Time to move on." Rex whined softly, pressing his head against Ethan's hand. Tommy's eyes glistened. "Will you come back?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Count on it. Just keep this place standing till I do." He walked toward the door, the morning light haloing his silhouette. Before leaving, he turned back one last time. "Lena," he said. She looked up. "Don't ever let anyone tell you silence is weakness." She smiled through tears. "I won't." As his footsteps faded down the street, Lena stood by the window, watching him disappear into the sunlit haze. For a moment she thought she saw his reflection in the glass, steady, unyielding, a protector carved by storms. Then it was gone. The bell jingled again as Tommy returned from the back with a loaf of bread in hand. "Mom, Rex stole one of the biscuits." She laughed, the sound free and bright. "Then maybe he earned it." Later that day, as dusk settled over Redstone, the town gathered outside Tommy's corner for its reopening. The sheriff, Mrs. Carter, and half the neighborhood came, their faces warm and smiling. Lanterns glowed along the sidewalk, and the sea breeze carried the laughter of a town reborn. Lena gave a small speech, her voice trembling but proud. "This store isn't just ours," she said. "It belongs to everyone who refused to stay silent when it mattered." The crowd applauded. Tommy raised his hands in victory. Rex barked joyfully at the fireworks that began to sparkle faintly over the horizon. Up on the hill overlooking the bay, Ethan watched from his truck, cap in his lap, the last rays of daylight glinting on his uniform. The reflection of the fireworks danced across his windshield. He smiled to himself, a quiet peace settling over him. "Good job, Redstone," he whispered. Then he started the engine and drove toward the distant road, where the sky met the ocean, toward another dawn, another fight, another promise. And as the lights of Redstone flickered below, the world felt still, not silent, but whole.